And I think it must have been so frustrating for the people around me when they would see me, the day after we were together, or the week after, and say, we still on for that thing? Or, oh yeah, do you remember we were talking about that? And I got no fucking clue whatsoever. I couldn't retain these, I couldn't make new memories.
Believe me when I say, believe me when I say, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, it's just me, Bellissi.
Hello and welcome to the new episode of Now. I'm Bellissi, I'm an independent artist, a music producer and writer. The artist and the addict, the acidic unity. You see, I think that you got to have this crazy addictive nature to be an artist. That's certainly what I've found. I think they go hand in hand to do what we do and what I do as an artist. I've said it before, doing this or being an entrepreneur or starting your own business, you have to have 100% conviction. You've got to be on it all the time. And so you've got to be addicted to it. It's in your blood and it's more important than oxygen. But the downside of having this addictive nature is that it doesn't just stick to the art, or it certainly didn't to me. It doesn't just stick to the art, to the work. Everything tastes so good. You're just addicted to everything. And the big one for me is alcohol. And I think we're really privileged these days with social media, and that we can see the lows of substance abuse. And most of my idols, if indeed they're still alive, now talk about their addiction and how they become sober or clean. And they display this new persona that to be an artist, you don't have to get your highs from the drugs and the alcohol. But during my youth, this was all I saw. I saw the Jim Morrison, the Bowie, Lemmy, they're getting high and loaded. And you know what? It looked cool as fuck. That's what I wanted. That's how I saw it to be. I saw that being an artist, a rock star, was to have this specific lifestyle. The addict and the artist, they were in unity. They worked together. And so that's all I saw. And so to talk about my own addiction, I believe I've had this addiction since I was a child. I can vividly remember the first taste of alcohol. I know exactly where I were. I can see the room that I was in. It stayed with me forever. And it was down in this coastal town in Weston-super-Mare. And I was only a child, and we was visiting my nan, and she'd always have a glass of sherry in the afternoon. And she let me have a little sip of it. When Mum found out, she was not happy. But I just had a little sip, only a little bit. But I remember what it tasted like. And I think I was hooked then. I loved it. I really loved the taste of it. And in later years, I'd drink bottles of that stuff. And as I got older, drinking just became a way of life for me. I drink every single day, not to excess, but it was... I don't want to say it's promoted, but it was sort of a way of life. You come home from work and you have a few tinnies or you have a glass of wine. You see it in all your programs and the movies. You come in, stressful day, have a little glass of wine. And I saw it, that's just way of life. You have your dinner and you have a drink. But for me, having this addictive nature, I took it a step further. I would drink, a little bit more. I wouldn't just have one glass, I'd have half a bottle, But even though back then I would drink every day, it wouldn't be to excess, especially on what I would call a school night. If I had to get up the next day for early for work, and especially during the ambulance service, and drive, I would limit my intake. I'd still have a drink the night before, but not very much. But in later years, it did creep up, slowly. And I think the big sort of thing I noticed first was the shopping bill. It sounds ridiculous, but I did, like a bottle of Jack Daniels, I'd go out and that would normally last around a month or so. And now oh, we've run out, and it was a weekly thing. And if it was a day off, or we had something going on, a few drinks with friends or whatever, I'd drink a bottle with relative ease. And then in the morning, when your mates, your friends are nursing this hangover, and yeah, you might feel a little bit rough, but then come lunchtime, you're raring to go again. You have your dinner, and I have a little glass, and they're looking at you like you're fucking nuts, but that's ready to go again. The hair of the dog, and I believe the hair of the dog is the saying of an alcoholic. It's medicinal. It's the hair of the dog. It just means I can drink in the morning. And in my 40s, I learnt an expression, a functioning alcoholic. And I love this term. And I think it described me perfectly. And I would used to say it, I would throw that phrase around to people, and they would just take it in jest and laugh it off. But looking back, I think it was my way of saying, I do have a little problem here, maybe I need a little bit of help. But I just carried on. And you know what? I always said I never wanted to have a problem with alcohol. And the main reason was I didn't want to have to give it up. So, a few years ago, probably 10 years ago, I did try and stop, and I'd have a day off or limit the intake in the evening because I didn't want to be an alcoholic. I didn't want to have to admit that I have a real problem with it and I am going to have to stop completely. And I even had conversations about it with the family and saying, I think I do have a problem. I think I'm going to have to quit. And they said, well, maybe just limit it, don't have it in the week, just have it at the weekends or whatever, which, as we well know, is no good for you anyway. But that didn't really work. Maybe I'd take a day off. I don't think I ever had a week off ever. I don't think I ever did. Maybe I'd take a day off, maybe two, but that would be it. And even if I did limit it to a little bit, a couple of weeks later, it'd creep back up and back up. And I watched an interview with Ben Affleck. So he's another open alcoholic. And he said he had a real problem with it and lost a lot over his alcoholism. And he gave it up for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years or so. And then he thought, well, maybe I can just drink a little bit and I'll just have a glass of champagne here and there, maybe a glass of wine with my dinner. And I know a few other people that do this, think, well, I've got over that massive addiction now. I was just young, and so I can just have just this odd glass. But as he states, a couple of years later, bang, he was back on it. And it does. If you've got a problem with it, that's it. If you've got this addictive nature, it's going to creep back up. It's that ego we've talked about before, that little inner voice. Yeah, you'll be fine. Just have a one now and again. You'll be all right. And it's just slowly taking over you. And that really describes my relationship with this drug, with alcohol. I didn't need it first thing in the morning. And like I said, some days I could go without it, rarely, but I could. And, even in the afternoon, although I did like a morning or an afternoon session. But for me, strange as it is, it was 5:30. My whole day revolved around 5:30 because that meant I could drink. If it was 3 o'clock, I'd be clock watching, 4 o'clock, or 4, or 4:45. And then at 5:30, bang. Here I go again. 5:30 again. Here I go again. And I had this weird relationship with wine as well, red wine in particular. So I could have a bottle of gin or a bottle of whiskey or whatever, but I would feel cheated if I didn't have my wine. So it doesn't matter how intoxicated I got, I would have to finish the night with a bottle of wine. And in 2021, I experienced a year like no other. We all go through these bad times and we all experience loss. And in 21, that was my year for it. And the year kicked off, January, February, straight away we lost. And it just continued on. I lost my best friend, my beautiful German Shepherd, Indy, which fucking killed me. I was betrayed by a very close family member. So it was almost like that he died. Again, it was something else and really hurt one of my loved ones. And then the biggest of all, my mum was taken from us, which was also like, that was like a car crash. One day she was there and the next she was gone. And there was highs as well. I got married that year. It was a massive year. But and we moved to Wales as well. Moving house. I went through everything on that year. But it was the loss that really took its toll on me. And for me, alcohol was the cure. It really was. Every bit of bad news, like we all do. You just have a little tipple or bad day. And having that bad year, the alcohol went through the roof. I was drinking obviously every day, and I went full time as an artist then as well. So I didn't have any of these early morning drives anymore. So at night I had no reason to curb the drinking. And a lot of that year is just a blur now. I do remember the times of loss and remember the wedding, which was great. But there's loads that I don't remember. Obviously, as we know, alcohol, you're unable to form memories, and a lot of it is just a blur. But I do remember the day that I stopped drinking, and it was 3 a.m. on the 28th of November, 2021, and I was heavily intoxicated. Heavily, I'd had, I don't know, loads of spirits. I think 3 bottles of wine. And I wasn't ready to stop. I was still going, but then I started to get emotional, and I think I had an argument, and I remember it vividly. It's like the alcohol's just give me that little window as a final farewell and said, "You will remember this," and I do. I remember it. And so, following an incident whereby I was going to do something that I would never recover from. And I'm not going to go into details, but I was blessed to have my loved ones with me that night. And it just, everything come to a head. The stars aligned, and it was right. It was time for me to admit to them that I had a real problem, and I broke. And I really did break down, and admitting my problem, and telling that I knew, that I absolutely knew that this was going to kill me. This was going to end me. And with that revelation and just telling my loved ones this, just like that, I stopped. And I've not drunk since, And was it hard? Yes, of course it was hard. But my will is so strong, and the strength of an addict is, God, it's so strong, because just as we want that and we go at that addiction and the art and work and building the business and the drugs and the alcohol and everything else, we can do it for good as well. We can switch that mind and say, no, I'm doing this now, and we will, hell for leather. And so when I returned home the following day, I got rid of all the alcohol from the house, and there was quite a bit of it, which was really gutting, because we didn't have a lot of money at the time, and we was throwing away a lot of money. Some of it we did give away, but I did keep one bottle. There is one bottle of wine in the house. It's the only alcohol that's allowed in the house, and it was a gift from the chauffeur from our wedding. And so we've kept that bottle, and I do stare at it. It's right where I sit in our lounge. I do stare at it. It's right in my eye line, but it doesn't crucify me. It doesn't tease me. It doesn't tempt me. It's just there as a reminder of my strength, really, and how far I've come. There are days I look at it, especially if there's a rough day, and I think, oh gosh, or a nice sunny day, drinking outside, bloody hell, that was the best. But I have kept that bottle, and I will keep that bottle. What I did have a problem with after I made that decision, and I was really worried, concerned about it, was, would I be able to write? Will I still be able to be an artist? I always saw those go hand in hand, and I loved sitting in the studio or sitting down to write a story or a song with a bottle of wine and, a smoke. And I love that. Sometimes I'd wait for that time of day where I'd put off the writing all day long so I could do it with a bottle. And I just saw that's how my heroes did it. I see Jim, and, he's in the studio with a bottle of Jack Daniels, whilst he's composing these lyrics, And so I was really worried, could I still come up with something? Could I still write? And in the few weeks that ensued, I did struggle a little bit, and some of the stuff that I produced, I was really questioning, is this good enough? With this sober mind, I was analysing it even more. But it was just something I had to get my mind around and relearn, and in actual fact, the music that I'm producing now is better, especially when it comes to playing instruments. Because when it did, especially in the evening, I couldn't play. Who can, well, some of the great, obviously they can, but I couldn't. When I was that intoxicated, I couldn't. And sometimes when I would write as well, I'd read it the next day and I couldn't make fucking head nor tail of what I'd written. So with that sober mind, at least what I was doing, it was, the next day it was going to be coherent. But more than that, when I found that I really sunk into the art, I was away again anyway. It was like I was intoxicated, because I was intoxicated by the art. So it didn't really feel much different. I just had to get into that mindset and forget that I didn't have a bottle there. But I, like all my idols, like all artists, I believe I'm an addict. We're addicts, and I'm proud to be one. I've just changed the drug. The drug now is art, it's creation, and it's life. And it sounds so corny. It's such a cliche. But humans are a fucking cliche. We are a cliche, and we should embrace that cliche. My whole life is better now. There are two big differences. The days are longer because they're not, constricted by this 5:30. Once then I can open up the bottle, and then the rest of the night, that's it, it's gone. Might as well just go to bed. So the days are longer. I'm able to produce so much more work. And then the big one is I remember things. And I think it must have been so frustrating for the people around me when they would see me, the day after we were together, or the week after, and say, we still on for that thing? Or, oh yeah, do you remember we were talking about that? And I got no fucking clue whatsoever. I couldn't retain these, I couldn't make new memories. So I lost so much. So that is something that I love now. And I think the family around me and friends, when they tell me something, at least they know I'm going to remember, I'm going to retain that information. And again, I say that we are blessed to live in this time, where we can see the other side of addiction, and the rock stars and the actors and the artists, talk openly about their battles with addiction. And I think that's really good. And a lot of social media now, a lot of young people are turning their back on drink. They're not alcoholics, but they're making a lifestyle choice, and that's fantastic. And now we can choose, what we want to do, what is best for our path, not just our health, but our path as an artist, and not align ourselves with just this tiny glimpse of what we thought an artist was or has to be. But we understand that, yes, we are addicts. I am an addict, and I accept it. And I worked so hard to find addictions that are wholesome for my journey and my art. Cheers.
Believe me when I say, believe me when I say, believe me when I say, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace, not everyone likes peace. It's just me, Bellissi.